You're listening to Not So Live from Asteroid G, the podcast that has a sequel and then another sequel, and then eventually the sequels just aren't as good as the original podcast. I'm your host, Mike Finkelstein. With me, as always, is...
Ghoul Mike Buddy over here. Horror talking sequels, I think, today.
We are going to be discussing sequels. We did that podcast a little while ago about good sequels and what makes a good sequel. But now we're going to go the other side of it. I have seen more than one list online talking about terrible sequels. And I found a specific one that I kind of liked because of the diversity of it from the AV Club. All credit to them for this list. And we're going to briefly go through most of these, but touch upon a few that are actually, worth discussing. Some of which I think we've actually discussed before. Some of these are crap, and they'll get like 2 words from each of us, and then we're just going to move on because no. And so it's a good opener for this list, if only because I've seen it and I have thoughts, is Caddyshack 2. Now, I'll let you say your piece in a sec, but I'm going to be honest with you. I went back and watched Caddyshack recently for the website a couple of years ago. That's recently to me for an 8-year-old website. And I didn't like Caddyshack. There's funny bits, most of which come from Chevy Chase, which is its own like bag of cats that you have to like fight if at that point because of Chevy Chase. Right. But as terrible as Caddyshack 2 is, and it's not good, it's not good at all. It at least has a weird little vision to itself that I kind of appreciate. That dumb mini golf tournament for the golf course and all that. It's bad. It's bad. This is a bad movie. But I appreciated the daring with which they tackled it.
It's funny because, like, I saw, full disclosure, Caddyshack 2 before I saw Caddyshack 1 as a kid.
Me as well. It was on HBO all the time.
Exactly. Yeah. So, like, I thought it was kind of funny as a kid. I thought it had its moment. I thought that Dan Aykroyd was funny. I thought Robert Stack was very creepy. The Unsolved Mysteries guy. Even when he talks, I get chills still. Yeah. But like as far as like compared to the first one, personally, I love the first one. I think it's some really good stuff.
I don't argue that.
But I understand what you said, and you're right about some of its low points. Some of its high points are high. Like Rodney Dangerfield, like is for me in that movie. He's got some just great little one-liners that are classic. If you kind of like understand like the golf humor thing, I guess, in movies. But like, is it a good movie? Caddyshack 2? Nah, it's not good.
No, it's a really not good movie. But again, it does at least try something different, and except for Bill Murray or Dan Aykroyd basically doing the Bill Murray shtick. But the
funny thing about that, like, I feel like because Bill Murray and Dan Aykroyd, like, have a bit of like a challenge with each other every now and again, the way Bill Murray and Chevy Chase did not like each other in the first movie. Like, I don't know if you know that in the first movie, they didn't like each other at all. And
they don't like each other at all. Yeah, no, that's not a secret.
The scene they filmed when it's the two of them and like, Chevy over in Bill Murray's like little, Caddyshack, I guess you'd say, where he like lives on the golf course. Well, that was completely ad-libbed. Completely ad-libbed because they didn't want to work together. They walked on, did that, and then walked off. It's great. But I feel like they almost did the same thing in Caddyshack 2, like maybe trying to stick it to Bill Murray a bit by making it Dan Aykroyd play that like comic relief character. But, we've talked about this movie probably enough, but that's my little thought.
I knew we were going to open strong, and then we were going to have a whole run of things that we were just like, it exists. And to start with the thing of it exists, The Sting 2. Now, I've seen The Sting. It's a fun little movie for what it is. It's a very 70s heist film. I can see why it's influential towards like the Ocean's 11 series and all that, like which it's drawn as. But most people don't discuss The Sting anymore because it's aged. It's okay. And then they did a sequel that no one gave a shit about, and that's The Sting 2, and there you go.
Yeah, I maybe saw this movie once. This thing, like you said, I can appreciate what it did for the genre that it was. And it's a classic movie, but it is, 50 plus years old almost at this point now. So it's kind of aged itself out of relevance.
It has.
But The Sting 2, again, not a good movie.
It exists. It had the same writer, didn't have the same cast, really doesn't even have the same characters, although some of them may or may not be the same, but they have different names, but they don't have different. It's really weird. No one cared. No one cared when it came out. No one was like, hey, let's make The Sting 3. It just, it exists, and we move on. To Staying Alive, which is, I'm going to admit, the concept that this movie exists, that the first Saturday Night Fever did so well, despite being wretchedly misogynistic,
Mhm.
was enough for them to go, you know what we liked about that movie? About weird guy, like gangster guys. I've barely seen the original one, so I'm just
Mhm.
summarizing. But about this movie about these guys in New Jersey who
Mhm.
decide like they like to go disco dancing because that's what you did in the 70s at night at a club. That was disco dancing. And the
Right.
thing that we want to take from that is not the New Jersey or the other guys or the crime or any of that. We just want to take the disco dancing.
Because that was the high point of the movie, am I
So,
right?
I mean, it was. It's what everyone remembers about it, even though that's only a thin sliver of the movie. But that's what the
Mhm.
sequel's all about. John Travolta's character going off to do some kind of Broadway disco dancing. I'm going to admit, I've seen clips of this, and I'm like, this is
Yeah.
not the movie for me.
Yeah, I like John Travolta as an actor. This movie, like I think you're right. I think I've seen parts of it. I never took the time. I've barely seen Saturday Night Fever. They're not my kind of movie. I can appreciate them for what they are, but it's a pass for me.
All I really know of this movie that I is stuck in my brain is he gets whatever it is that he wants by the end of the film, and like the girl he's kind of been chasing, although I don't know that she's really a love interest anyway. She's like, "What are you gonna do now?" And he's like, "I'm gonna strut," and he starts walking down the street with the Bee Gees, and you're just like, "What is this movie?"
Oh my god, I don't know why I almost forgot about that. That's so bad.
And now it's stuck in everyone else's brain that's ever seen it,
Yeah,
and you're sitting there going, "I'm gonna strut."
yeah. Good luck with that, everybody.
Troll 2. I haven't seen the first Troll. I haven't seen the second Troll. All I know is that everyone says it's a so bad it's good kind of movie, but I'm going to pass.
The first Troll, yes, it is. I've seen it. It is one of those. It is so bad it's good kind of movies. It has some. I think that's the movie where like the meme comes from, or where it's the guy like looking up at the stairs, like no, with the
I,
glasses. I think that's the movie that's from. Or maybe it's Troll 2 here. I don't know, but I never
one of
saw
them
this
had
one.
Leonardo DiCaprio in one of his first roles. I know that much.
Well, it had
One of
to.
them. One.
Gosh, couldn't tell you then. But
Nope,
it's
it's fine.
whatever. They're bad. They're bad.
I looked up because we had the Gremlins podcast, so I looked up movies
Yes.
like Gremlins because I was curious, and I went and watched Critters, and that's
Mhm.
an okay film. It's fine. It has
Mhm.
one of the dudes from the Orville in it, which is impressive. The
Mhm.
first Troll made the list of movies like Gremlins. Notably absent from that list, Troll 2. All the other critters, all the ghoulies, everything, not Troll 2, which says all you need to know about Troll 2, I think.
Yeah, yeah. I'm looking at its wiki real quick because I'm curious. It had a budget of $100,000, so congratulations, you made a movie
You
on
made a
that
movie.
budget.
Hey, you had twice as much as Clerks, so there you go.
Yeah, yeah. And
Yes.
it certainly was twice as bad because Clerks is a genius film.
It's really well made for $50,000. Let's put it like
Yeah,
that. I actually
yeah,
like the movie a lot, but it's also really well made for 50 grand. Troll
yeah,
2 is really poorly made for 100 grand.
yeah. It's just really poor made. Period.
Really poorly made. So, Poltergeist 3. I gotta admit to you, this is the one I've seen the most because it's the one that got the most screen time on
Right.
HBO.
Right. And I have visions of skyscrapers and the little girl in my head still
Yeah.
because it went from the home in suburbia to now we're spooking you in a skyscraper in Chicago or something. Like, it's a scary movie, I guess, but
It's
it's
fine.
definitely bad
It's
compared to
eh.
the first couple.
It's meh. There's some
Mhm.
stuff with an elevator with mirrors and
Yeah,
like
yeah,
she's forced to go live with her cousins because her family doesn't want to deal with the poltergeists anymore, which is really none of the actors besides the girl wanted to come back, so they had to
right.
figure out some way to get a sequel when no one but the girl is still interested. This is a movie
Mhm.
that didn't need to exist, and that a fair point. Plenty of movies don't need to exist, but this is definitely a movie that, even on the thin standard of movies that probably didn't need to exist but still got made, this one didn't need to exist. There
Yeah,
was
the first one's very good. The second one's fine.
fine,
This one not good at all.
not good. No, it exists, and that is all that needs to happen. On the subject
Mhm.
of movies that don't need to exist, Aliens versus Predator Requiem. Didn't we say all we needed to say with the first terrible Aliens versus Predator?
Yeah, I like Xenomorphs and I love Predator. Like they're
Uh-huh.
two of my favorite like monsters in
Uh-huh.
movies. And when they were on the screen together, I'm like, oh, this is gonna be so good. And I remember liking these movies when they came out. But if you try to rewatch them, like they are so bad
The
compared to
first
the
one
brilliance of the
Yeah,
first
yeah.
movies.
The first of the two Alien versus Predator movies, which I
Not
mean,
half bad.
not bad. It's
Mhm.
a what's his name? Paul W. Anderson, I think, did it. And he does video game movies, and it feels very video gamey in its construction and everything else. But it has some energy, and it balances. It has a good heroine. You can kind of get into it. It doesn't hold a candle to the best of the AVP comics or video games or any of that. But it's a movie that exists, and it's fine. If they really had to get one done and they didn't want to do it well, this was about what you were going to get. Requiem is a movie designed to tie up one plot thread from the previous one and do it with half the budget and none of the lighting. It is nigh incomprehensible to watch. Nothing important happens in it. You don't care about any of the characters. And then all the aliens, including the bread alien, who was introduced in the previous film, dies. So then you just move on. Yay.
Yeah. It's like you said, they have the little sort of jump scare at the end of the first movie with the Predalien popping out of Scar's chest and all that, and they'll be excited. We can make a movie out of this. And then you made a really good point there. How dark was that movie to watch? I remember seeing it in the theater, and I couldn't tell what was going on half the time.
Can't. There's a rule in horror production that when you don't have the budget to show things right, do it in the dark. With darkened lighting to try and obscure things. And generally it works because you can make the monsters more intense because it's lurking in the darkness. This one was you know what we can't afford? Even a little bit of lighting. Let's just hide more of it. Let's just do darkness on our darkness and not bother with lights at all.
It was they terrible. Didn't have money to shoot outside in the sun at any given point. It was everything was dark. The hospital. I remember when the Predalien inserted the eggs into the the maternity ward women, which I mean is horrific when you think about what they actually put in that movie.
Yep.
And I did it go in her mouth? Did it go in her chest? I couldn't tell.
Yeah.
Terrible.
Book of Shadows, Blair Witch 2. Did you even see this one?
No, the first one was fine. It was very scary for the time. Great found footage movie. It made me think it was real, but the second one, it just never got my attention.
The thing about this, I worked at a radio station when this movie came out. The soundtrack for it is amazing. If you have a chance, like with some other movies that came out, pick up the soundtrack. The soundtrack is great. It's like with Queen of the Damned. Terrible movie, fantastic soundtrack. Same kind of thing here. But if you go and watch the movie, it's not even a sequel to Blair Witch. It's basically a movie that's that Blair Witch movie that you liked? What if the people in the sequel treat it like it's a movie that exists in their world, and then a haunting happens? And you're like, how is... what? And then it's boring. On top of all that contrived plot, it's boring. So I've watched it once. I feel no need to watch it again. I would rather go back and watch the first one. I didn't even like the first one. It was fine. It's if you don't have the contrivance of it being a documentary, which is what sucked people in, and the surprise of it being, it's actually not a document. Wow, this is really cool, but the way they did it. But if you go to it 3 or 4 years later, I already know what's going to happen, then it has nothing to it, and the sequel has even less.
Yeah, I'm looking at the soundtrack because that's the only thing that interests me about this movie at all since you mentioned it. And there is some really good stuff on here. I'm going to listen to it. And we'll talk about, I'm sure, Queen of the Damned at some other point a little bit, but also great soundtrack. And
yes.
Real quick, just what bugs me about that movie is when Lestat sings, it's it's the musicians and not him, and that still kills me.
It's the worst. Yeah, well, okay, so Jonathan, we're way off topic here. Although on the subject of bad sequels, Queen of the Damned. It wasn't even on the list, but you know what? Honorable mention, we're going to write it in. So the thing about Queen of the Damned and that soundtrack is Jonathan Davis of Korn wrote and was going to perform all the stuff on the soundtrack. Warner Brothers, who has his contract, wouldn't let him do it for whoever released this. So they told him that he wasn't allowed to perform on the soundtrack. So he got other people to do the performances for him, and he got a lot of really good people on this soundtrack. It's great. Like Chester Bennington and Wayne Static and a bunch of dudes doing the songs, and those versions of those songs are fantastic. Jonathan Davis can't sing. He is in Korn for a reason because it's nu metal rap rock, and when you hear him sing the lyrics in the movie, it makes your ears bleed. They would have been better off keeping the other people in the movie. I'm just saying.
Yeah, fair point, and we'll get on music at some other point. They're Korn, one of my favorite bands of all time, so I have opinions on that. But I get what you mean about him when he's not for everybody.
I'm not saying they're bad. I like Korn for what they are, but he's not a good singer. He's a good rap rocker, and that's a different skill.
Yeah, he's a performer. He's a performer.
Yeah, performer, does great performances. But yeah, as far as Blair Witch, let's get back on topic here. There's some great stuff on this soundtrack. Stuff from Rob Zombie. There's a particularly good song, Goodbye Lament, from Tony Iommi and Dave Grohl. Absolutely love that. It's at the top of my playlist all the time. It's great.
That's what that caught my attention. Look at I'm like, oh, Tony Iommi and Dave Grohl. Ooh, okay. Like, I like that. Yeah.
UPO is a band most people don't know about. Their song Feel Alive is fantastic. It's on here. It's so good. So I highly recommend the soundtrack. I highly don't recommend Blair Witch 2.
Yeah, agreed. The next one on your list here, I still know what you did last summer, even though I know what you did last summer, and then I still know what you did last summer a third time and a fourth time, and it's just they're all bad.
I'll always know what you did last summer was the third one, which is unrelated and makes no sense because it's like, the whole franchise sucks. Okay, first movie sucks. Second movie sucks harder. Third movie is completely inconsequential. I'm surprised. I will always know what you did last summer isn't on here. And you know what? for just honorable mention of shit that does not need to be watched, the series they did on Amazon Prime, which was also wretched and didn't get a second season. I could live without this entire slasher franchise. It's garbage.
It's like you find certain actors or actresses attached to franchises, and I think this is the one with Jennifer Love Hewitt. And she's fine as an actress, but she picked the wrong franchise to hitch herself to.
She did. Well, she was hoping for her own Scream, wasn't she? She was in Party of Five with Neve Campbell, wasn't she?
I think so. Yeah.
So she was like, "Oh, look, I can get my own slasher franchise like Neve did." And then, she got the wrong fucking one. It was, I mean, credit to her, of all the stuff to come out of that late 90s, early 2000s slasher boom, the I Know What You Did franchise had more movies than anything except Scream, but they weren't good. They weren't. She would have been better attaching herself to, Urban Legend or something. That would, so bad. so bad.
Yeah.
So, we've talked about this one before. I don't feel like we need to touch upon it a lot. It's on this list, although I actually have to say it's one of the ones that I enjoyed more. Friday the 13th, Part 5, A New Beginning. This one was, when I read the AV Club list, for some background on this, they were like, it's too gratuitous, too much nudity, too much blood, doesn't really go anywhere, it just sucks. And I'm like, the nudity and the blood was the only thing that really picked up this franchise. Have you been watching these movies up to Part 5? I mean, come on.
Yeah. I don't know what they were thinking. We talked about that. It's a poor decision, folks. Sorry.
I don't agree with this one. Just because this one was actually lively. I didn't hate it. So, movies that everyone hated, Zoolander 2.
Oh, man, I was excited for this too. Zoolander 1 is so stupidly funny.
It's so stupid good. It is. I agree.
It was such a disappointment.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I didn't even bother watching it because the reviews for it were so bad and it disappeared so quickly from theaters. I'm like, I got what I needed with the first one.
Yeah, I wish I didn't go see it. The first week it came out. I had such high hopes because the first one is it's a stupid movie, but it's funny. It has some just really funny parts in it. Will Ferrell's brilliant, as always, and all the things he does when he just tries to be serious and he's not. It's just. But the second one's just so terrible.
The first movie gave us Blue Steel, and it will be a permanent
Ferrari Latigra.
Yeah, see, we don't need any more than that. That's all we ever need. It's great.
I still say to people at work sometimes, look, I can't turn left. You got to help this customer. I know what I'm talking about. They might not get it, but I laugh.
It's brilliant.
Yeah.
On the subject of movies that didn't need to exist, I'm not even going to go with the sequel. Super Babies. There is a sequel, Baby Geniuses 2, which is just, or I guess technically Baby Geniuses was the first one. Super Babies, Baby Geniuses 2 was the second. And until I read this list and saw that these movies existed, I forgot these movies existed, and I was better for it.
Like I am my wife and I talked about this. Like, like, is there such a thing as not a creepy talking baby?
No,
And the only
no.
one we could come up with is the one from like the insurance commercials or whatever. Like there was a funny little commercial with the baby, the Super Bowl commercials or whatnot. But that's it. This movie's wretched. I
Yes.
couldn't watch it. I can't. I don't like it. I think they're creepy. I don't like them.
When I worked at Blockbuster, they had a screener tape for the first one, and I would watch anything that came out. I still do. Like, you put a movie in front of me, I'm like, okay, I can probably at least like surf on the web while I'm doing this. This one was like, this is the first Baby Geniuses we're talking about, not even the sequel. It was god awful. I don't even remember it, and I remember everything I watched. This one went in and went out, and I'm like, well, I'm done with that now. I don't need it. And then the fact that somehow they managed to make a sequel, which by all accounts from everyone is absolute garbage in comparison to the first movie. It boggles the mind. But then we have a pair of sequels I guess technically three, that didn't have the original creators on board, and that should have been enough to stop anyone from wanting to do a sequel. But, a name is a name. And we start with The Birds 2 Land's End. I haven't seen this. Have you seen it?
No, so I pulled up the wiki real quick just to see if I get it. Literally, the plot point has 3 sentences, and I'm already done.
Well, they can only summarize a movie that's been out since the 90s with 3 sentences. That tells you all you need to know. Like, the concept of making a sequel to an Alfred Hitchcock movie without Alfred Hitchcock, like that right there should just stop you and make you go, yeah, this is a bad idea. We shouldn't be doing this. It's like doing a shot-for-shot remake of Psycho. Sure, on paper you'll make money, but really, do we need to do this?
It feels like these were like, the first kind of like cash grab things for like, the name itself. We can kind of ride on it. And to your point, like, you don't try to remake Hitchcock and try to like do something that like, he's
Hitchcock.
It's Hitchcock. That's all you got to say. And
say only what you will about his personal life, the man was kind of a monster. That's no one's debating that.
Right.
But when it came to his movies, like, he did know his craft.
He did. And, I remember, as a kid, like the only movie that I feel like could be even like considered a sequel or like a replay of a Hitchcock movie that was any kind of successful was High Anxiety by Mel Brooks to redo Vertigo.
Yep.
And it was a comedy, but it had little influences of horror from Hitchcockian in there. But it was a comedy and it knew what it was and it stayed in its lane and that was good.
Yeah. No, I agree. It absolutely. So, on the same subject, American Psycho 2. That's a movie we didn't need. Like,
no.
So the first American Psycho ends, and the director Mary Harmon has said that she doesn't actually like the ending she left out, but I think the ending is brilliant. It's ambiguous like the book, and if you haven't read the book is like hard to get through in that really graphic, gory sort of way. But then it's spiked by passages of pure comedy, and you're sitting there going, this is a farce. Even the gory passages are meant for like gross out comedy in a way. And yes, it's wretched. It is. I don't defend the actions that are written, but I understand why it was written the way it is, and I actually kind of appreciate it in that regard. The movie follows that same logic. The movie is weird, and it has such a strange ending to it, and you're just like, did anything that I just watched happen? I don't think it did, and I love the ambiguity of that. American Psycho 2 is just a slasher flick that removes all the ambiguity. It's stupid.
It takes, Mila Kunis and throws her in there and
as a slasher girl.
Because she was scarred because Patrick Bateman, killed her babysitter or something.
Yeah, which ignores the first movie's point entirely.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's a cash grab and name only to me. It wasn't a good movie. The first one's really good, and you brought up a lot of good points about appreciating the gore and not defending it and all that. Like this scene when he goes to the Asian laundromat to get the blood cleaned off, and he's like, "Oh, it's red wine." He's like, "I'll fucking kill you!" Like to the lady because she doesn't understand him. Like there's just really brilliant little things in the first one.
Oh yeah.
That the second one's just like, why did you bother? Get the fuck out of here.
Yep. The prequel, which so if we're gonna be get into semantics here, this is a prequel, not a sequel, but beyond that, Dumb and Dumber When Harry Met Lloyd. I haven't seen the first one. I'm not going to try and defend the first one or agree with it or whatever. I'm not a huge Farrelly Brothers fan, but I like everything I saw about this prequel that made me know I didn't need to watch it.
The first one, like we talked about a little bit before we jumped on here, if you like old Jim Carrey from the 90s and his comedy, you're gonna like it. It's fine. The second one, I didn't see it, and I can't remember if people liked it or hated it at this point. It just kind of is a movie that just faded into the ether for me. I'll probably never watch it. Maybe I'll catch it on like TNT one day or something, but I'm good, I guess.
Exactly. Batman and Robin. I think everyone knew this had to be on this list because this is the absolute nadir for the absolute nadir. This is the low point. I know I'm saying the word wrong. We're just going to go with it. So This is the low point for the Batman and Robin, or the Batman franchise that was started by Tim Burton and then taken over by Joel Schumacher and run right into the ground. And now, Schumacher has apologized for this film. And at the time, when I first heard he did, I appreciate it. But the more I've learned about this movie, the more it's like, this isn't really his fault. Warner Brothers wanted a toy commercial. They saw they want a toy commercial for the third one. They want a toy commercial for the second one because they realized how much the original Batman made and Batman Returns needed to be. But Batman Returns was too dark, and they didn't sell enough product off of it. So they wanted lighter and family-friendly and a toy commercial, which they got for the third one. And then at that point, they were like, we want this, but even more. And Schumacher was like, well, if that's what you want and you're paying the paycheck, I will do it. But he and everyone on set and everyone else said, this is a toy commercial. We all realize we're making a toy commercial for an hour and a half, basically. So I don't really blame Schumacher. I think the movie is terrible, beyond terrible. But at the same time, because it ran itself and the franchise into the ground, we got to have the reboot from Christopher Nolan. So I don't want to watch this movie, but I appreciate what it allowed to have happen afterwards.
It's like this is the one where it was the bat nipples, right? This is the bat nipple movie, and this is where he pulls out the bat credit card, like don't leave home without a poison ivy. Oh my! Like it was like they were trying to like fourth wall break before fourth wall breaking was a thing, and like you took my boy Batman and you massacred him.
But the thing is, if this movie had been a success, they would have put out Batman Black cards. Okay,
oh my god!
Like we were spared what could have come from this movie product-wise, and we were spared what was going to happen if we got a fifth one, even though Schumacher swears he was going to make a darker one for the fans. Yeah, no, you weren't. You were going to make another toy commercial because that's what they were paying you for. But
they took Schwarzenegger, they took Clooney, they took Uma Thurman, and they took Chris O'Donnell. Yeah, Chris O'Donnell. He took the four of them. He just were like, hey, we're going to roll this movie out because these are four, mega stars, and it'll be great.
Rushed it out. Oh,
yeah.
Yeah. It's so bad. So bad.
No thanks.
Movies I haven't seen, both Basic Instinct 2 and Son of the Mask.
Basic Instinct 2, it's fine if you want to watch like a really softcore porn kind of movie.
Well, but Basic Instinct, though. I mean,
you're much better off just watching Basic Instinct is
basically
my point.
Well, yeah, and I mean, it was a 20-year late sequel to Basic Instinct that was clearly made for the direct-to-video and direct-to-cable market.
Right.
So, like, you had to really want a sequel, and from what I heard, it was bad, but it was softcore porn, so no one's in it for the plot.
Right.
No one's in it for the plot. Son of the Mask, no one was there for Son of the Mask. That was... Jamie Kennedy, just no. Just stop.
There's a few things Jamie Kennedy does that I like, and this was not one of them.
No.
I maybe watched half of this movie. I don't remember any of it.
I just saw the trailers, and it already looked like a wretched piece of shit. I knew I didn't need to. And the thing is, there are fans of the comics that are going to be like, I didn't even like the first one, which is fair. The original comics were very 1990s. They were very dark and bloody. And it was like a cartoon, but with like horrendous violence on top of it. If that was your thing, that's great. I don't debate that. They wanted to make a big budget Hollywood movie out of that, and they got Jim Carrey for it. They got exactly the movie you would expect for The Mask. and it's fun for what it is. And then Jim Carrey didn't want to come back, and they wanted to do a sequel, so they brought in Jamie Kennedy, and they got exactly the movie you expect from getting Jamie Kennedy in for the role. Yeah. I'm sorry, it's terrible.
Yeah, no thanks. Another hard pass for me.
Hard pass on this one. Superman 4, The Quest for Peace, the movie that was made for 1/4 of the budget of the original Superman, and they somehow expected it to be good.
Like I remember seeing this movie as a kid. I mean, and probably this is one of my first Superman memories as a movie. Maybe I saw the one Superman for Richard Pryor before that, but I remember this was on HBO a lot also growing up. So I have like, I guess a part of appreciation for this movie because I saw it as a kid, but it's really terrible.
Terrible. It's terrible. Well, I was, I don't know, 5 when this movie, 3, something like that when this movie, I can't remember.
87.
Okay,
I was 5.
6. I was 6 when this movie came out. And I remember I was a huge Superman fan at the time. I still really like Superman, but there's other comic characters I like more. But I was the biggest Superman fan at the time because you're a kid and he's bright and colorful and he stands for something and blah, 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 you know?
Right. Leap tall buildings in a single bound kind of shit.
And he had movies, and none of the other heroes had movies, so he was the cool one. But, like, I remembered the first couple because they were on and my parents let me watch them over and over again. And then this one was coming out and I begged my parents to let me go see it. And apparently they saw the trailers and I didn't because they just managed to, brush me off a couple times. And then when it left theaters, I was like, oh, and then forgot about it and didn't watch it for 30 years. And then when I finally got around, I'm like, wow. My parents were right. This is a wretched piece of shit. God. Damn.
Yeah, score one for the good team parents right there getting that one right. Like this movie, like the nuclear man thing, like I guess Lex Luthor, I guess, is the best part of it, but I mean, that's just Gene Hackman doing Gene Hackman things. So,
but it's like we already had Superman fighting a bad Superman. That happened in the third movie.
Yeah, with Zod.
Yeah. Well, that was the second one. The third one was where he like divided himself into good and bad Superman and had his own fight in like the junkyard. Like 3 in a row, basically, where he's fought a Kryptonian as the big climax. It's dumb.
Yeah.
I don't know. No.
Yeah.
Space Jam: A New Legacy. Did you like Space Jam?
Funny. We watch movies, my wife and I, with another couple every now and again, and we were Space Jam was on the docket, and I was like, oh, I love Space Jam as a kid. Let's go. And I watched it again like recently, obviously within the last year, and I will say that I liked it as a kid.
Yeah,
that's about it.
I had never seen it. I somehow, when it came out in the 90s, I was just the right age to not see it when it was in theaters, and then I didn't care to pick it up afterwards because whatever. So I managed to avoid it. I only saw it this last year when my wife was wanting to, and then they had the Teen Titans Watch Space Jam. So I watched that version, which cuts out a lot of superfluous crap and inserts some comedy bits from the Teen Titans. And even then, I'm sitting there going, well, that's kind of a crap movie. Why did they make a sequel? And apparently most people agreed because the sequel tanked. So
yeah, LeBron James and all of his stardom could not save the second one. And rewatching the first one, like, I'm not trying to shade, Michael Jordan at all because, one of the greatest basketball players, if not the greatest of all time, like you can argue whatever, but he didn't even try to like act in this movie at all. Like there was nothing. Like even when he's talking to the Looney Tunes, it's like he's talking to someone holding a sock. It's just so bad. Yeah.
No, he wasn't hired for his acting skill.
No, and like I mean, the Looney Tunes are the best part of that. You're getting basically an 80-minute plus Looney Tunes short cartoon with some basketball and a superstar thrown in.
Yep.
Moving on.
That's it. So they have Scary Movie 5 on this list, as if that's the bad one of the franchise. I'm gonna be honest with you. The first one was amusing, but nothing past the first one was watchable. So I'm not sure why they singled out Scary Movie 5 specifically.
Like, I don't know. I'm looking it up right now to remember because these all blend together after the first one. To your point that I've seen, I think maybe this is the one where they were spoofing the alien invasion too, because I think War of the Worlds had just come out or something.
Sure.
I
You've
don't
seen
know.
more of this than I have, so
I don't remember much of it other than that.
I'm sure they probably worked in some Signs parody 10 years after Signs came out, which that's also a terrible movie.
Yeah, I think that's M. Night Shyamalan's one of his finer movies, but okay.
No. Oh, okay. You know what? It's sequels, but I'm going to have this discussion with you anyway. Swing fucking away. What the fuck was the point of this vision from 15 years ago? Swing away? Really? You're dying, you know what's going to happen, and you decide you can't go, aliens are going to come, and you should probably throw water at them. You're like, swing away. Fuck you. Okay.
I'm not going to debate. That is really a poor choice for what to say to your son as you're taking your other maybe dead son outside. But the horror, I don't know. Horror is not really the right word, but I guess this is suspense of that movie with the little shots of the aliens. I think it was really well done until you show them at the end.
Yeah.
And then the movie does kind of tank. Now, I wouldn't even say third act, but I'd say last 15 minutes are just real bad.
But that's the thing.
That's a good point.
A bad 15 minutes at the end will ruin a movie. And no matter how much I was interested in Signs, it completely bodges the job at the end to the point where I just can't enjoy it. It's like, not on this list, but worth adding, Alien Resurrection. 2/3 of a great movie, 1/3 assy, and now the alien queen can give birth like a human can. You're like,
yeah,
that's a terrible thing for her to do. She has to go through labor and gestate, and when she could produce thousands in an hour, you're thinking this is an improvement, and the thing that she births is just
horrific. Is this improving the life cycle of the alien? This seems very inefficient to me.
What the fuck was this? Like, two-thirds of a very dumb, but enjoyable movie with Sigourney Weaver clearly having fun, bringing her character back and being part alien and having a grand old time. And then it just fucking drops the goddamn basketball, okay?
Yeah. I mean, at least you got the satisfying kill of the guy popping the alien out through the guy's chest and his head at the end there.
Yeah,
like that guy got what he deserved.
He did. Yeah.
But I mean the movie, it had great high points, but that ending, ugh.
And then Signs just sucks. I'm sorry. No. Speed 2, Cruise Control. This is the dumbest fucking movie I think I've ever seen. Okay.
I haven't seen it. I remember it was on TV not long ago, and I tried to watch it. I got maybe 10 minutes, and I'm like, this boat is stupid. I'm turning it off.
Well, so cruise ships are huge. I'm not debating this point. Cruise ships are huge. And if you were to try and jump off the top of a cruise ship, you're going to die.
Yes.
But the cruise ship is not going fast. It's going like 20 miles an hour. I think they even say that at one point. And like at times it's going way slower than that. And the lifeboats are right near the bottom of the ship. And they show this to you because the water's real close. And all these people are like, we can't escape. We have to stay on this. When land is in the fucking distance, they're all wearing life jackets. And they're like, we're just going to stay on the boat. Like, really? I don't... No, at this point, no, you dumb motherfuckers, get off the boat. The movie's a half an hour long. They all bail out. The terrorists are left with the boat they can't do anything with, and that's that.
I mean, Keanu Reeves didn't even sign up for this, and I was out from that point on.
Yeah, he read it and he's like, "This is a dumb fucking movie. No, thank you."
Keanu, an absolute gift to humanity, by the way.
I know, and a smart businessman. He's sitting there going, "If I can't save this movie, we're not making this movie." Okay?
Oh, you know that's a great discussion for us to have. Who's the smarter businessman? Is it Keanu Reeves or is it Vin Diesel?
Well, okay. We need to do this on a separate podcast. We're not
that's what I'm saying. Yeah, we'll do that separately. Good
follow
one there.
Follow this up. Okay, so now this is one I hadn't heard of, and I'm not going to judge it. They had it on the list, but it felt like even the AV Club was making caveats for it because it's a different production team and a low-budget movie, and they did it for like various art house reasons and not the big showy dumb acidness of Showgirls, which is, by the way, the enjoyable part of Showgirls is the big dumb acidness of it. It's just such a dumb movie. But there's a sequel called Showgirls 2, Pennies from Heaven. And I haven't seen it. I'm not judging it. I feel like the people who made it knew they were making a low-budget art house whatever to follow up on one character for it. And it's Showgirls. Don't judge Showgirls for being Showgirls, okay?
I cannot believe that you actually managed to do this, but I mean, I found a movie now because I didn't see this either, so I was wikiing it. It has less in the premise plot than The Birds 2. It's literally one sentence.
Well, thank the AV Club for that. That's not my job doing this. I'm just trying to defend the decision to actually make this movie because you know what? Good on them. They made a movie.
The plot heavily echoes the original film, focusing on showgirl Penny. Okay, that's it. Moving on, I guess.
Nudity. Art house, low budget, you get what you pay for. You bought a sequel to Showgirls. Don't be offended by showgirls being showgirls, okay?
I guess this is probably like another soft porn. Oh man, but Showgirls, like that movie. I remember as a kid was like, it was like the porn movie almost. You would watch it, but like it's like on TV now and like really strategically placed, like blackout bras on all the topless scenes. It's actually quite hilarious to watch.
That sounds real funny. That would be an enjoyable thing to watch right there.
I think it's on VH1 every now and again too. Like, just keep an eye on like VH1 or something stupid. It pops up every like year or two. It's hilarious.
Not enjoyable to watch. Jaws: The Revenge. This one deserves to be on this list because
it's terrible.
The second one's worse than the first. The third one's worse than the second, and this is the one that tanked the franchise so bad they're like, we have to stop making these movies. Yeah. The fucking shark shows up on the East Coast. They go on a vacation to Hawaii, and the shark chases them around the world.
Hang on. I'm actually going to correct you here. It is the Bahamas they're in, so they are at least in the same hemisphere. I swear it's the Bahamas.
You had to defend that.
I had to let you just be correct. That's all.
It chased. Okay, you know what? I will correct myself. It chased them hundreds, maybe thousands of miles into a different climate.
And and the funny thing is that might be the most realistic thing about the movie because sharks do migrate. Everything else about this movie, and I've seen this movie dozens of times because I love Jaws, one of my favorite franchises. The first one is cinematic brilliance. The next three are terrible, and this one is no exception. It's terrible.
But there's no reason for this shark to be like, this woman needs to die and chase her specifically. Like, no.
The vindictive shark. That's what it's all. It's bad. It's bad. The first one's good. The rest of them we don't talk about.
I would rather watch the next one on this list than this, which is Grease 2, and this is terrible as well. Okay,
yeah,
I've seen this movie repeatedly because my sisters liked it. It's bad.
I think we watched this in music in grade school growing up. We watched Grease, and Grease as a kid is a fun movie. It's got musical numbers, it's upbeat, it's whatever. It's fine. Grease 2, I remember not even like I don't remember anything about it. I just don't.
They switch from cars to motorcycles. There's a
good choice.
Homecoming stage play thing at some point that's getting set up for. I'm not sure they actually have the play. It's been years since I've actually had to see any clips of this. And there's a big musical montage around bowling. And that's it. Oh,
riveting.
And Michelle Pfeiffer's in it, which I'm so sorry for Michelle Pfeiffer, but girls got to pay her bills, you know?
Yeah, yep. That's right. I do remember seeing her at some point in the movie.
Yeah, she's the lead pink lady or was a pink lady and quit. The details do not matter to me. It's Grease 2. I don't even like the first one, honestly, and the fact that I had to sit through the sequel repeatedly because of my sisters.
And I'm not a fan of the first one either. I just remember it was a funnish movie as a kid, and it got me out of school for a couple hours or whatever. So it is what it is. But I mean, they're not my movies anyway. That's not my genre. Whatever.
And that opening, one of the opening songs for the original Grease is kind of date rapey too.
A little bit, right?
A little bit. College humor pointed that out, and now that I've seen it, I'm not I can't not notice just how date rapey it is. There's actually a fair bit of date rapiness throughout that movie, and you're just like, this is more than just the 1950s here, guys.
I mean, I guess it was socially acceptable at the time.
That is something they should have corrected in the musical, sir.
Hard agree.
And finally, Exorcist 2, The Heretic. You will have to speak on this one. I don't know. Specifically because I can't make it through the first one because the first one I find wretchedly boring. I'm in the minority. I understand. Ghost stories and possession movies do nothing for me. The fact that I managed to sit through all three Poltergeists is fucking amazing and a testament to Spielberg. But I can't make it through The Exorcist, so I don't even know how bad The Exorcist 2 is, let alone all the other goddamn sequels and requels they've done. But
it's weird. It's weird.
Yeah.
It's
So
like,
Pazuzu, I think.
Yeah, Pazuzu's the demon. Reagan, the child who was possessed in the first movie is now like in a psychiatric ward, and it's an older Linda Blair who like the movie's weird because it almost tries to maybe give her like sex appeal at times, which is like the child who was vomiting puke in the first movie is now trying to look sexy in this one.
Everyone
I don't
has their
quite get
fetish.
it. I guess. But it's not a good movie. I like the first one. I know we've talked about this before. I think it's really good for the horror movie it is. But I know that it's not for everybody at all. That's true, and that's the way horror is. Horror people have their likes and their dislikes.
It's not the religious stuff that throws me off. Like, I don't even care. It's just the pacing is so slow, and especially in that first act. And you have to get through that first act. I know it picks up, but I can't just start a movie halfway. I have to start at the beginning, and it's so slow, and I just don't care. So
yeah, it's a longish movie for the time too. The Exorcist, 2 hours back in the 70s is a long movie to your point. So that first 40 minutes can feel it feels bad.
70s pacing is so hard to get through. It's just yeah. Any other honorable mentions you would throw on this list?
I can't think of any maybe directly offhand. But there were some ones on here that I think I have a spot for in my heart, and there are some that have a spot beneath my boot.
Yeah, no, I would agree with that. I think the only other one I would put on here, and they didn't do anything too recent, so I'm not going to blame them for that. I would probably throw the most recent The Matrix Resurrections on there, because that was just an unnecessary movie. But really, I would put Part 2 and Part 3 on there as well, because, frankly, I was fine with just The Matrix. After seeing the sequels, I'm like, I think the first movie ends on the perfect note, and we didn't need the rest of these.
The first movie really, really good, and I remember not liking the second and third movies very much, and I think I've grown to appreciate them a little bit with the finality of the storytelling, I guess. If we could talk about The Matrix at some other point too, but that's a good one. I like that.
Yeah. So, anyway, with that, this is Not So Live from Asteroid G. I know I teased that there were sequels to this podcast, but there are no sequels, and we're never going to do it. You just get to live with this podcast and enjoy it. I'm your host, Mike Finkelstein.
And I'm your other buddy, Mike, and you never can replace the original. Sorry, folks.
And we will see you all next time.